So we want to welcome you to In the Blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman. I tell you guys, we are so excited to be with you guys on this evening. We got a very special guest. We tried to do this last week. It didn't quite work out the way we planned, so we're going at it again this week. But we have my mother. She's going to be joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about straight from the mother's mouth. And so, listen, you guys want to make sure if you're a blended family, you want to have your notebook and piece of paper. If you're not a blended family, but you're intended on being a blended family, you want to have your notebook, your pen. You want to make sure you get on the phone, call anyone you know that's a blended family because they don't want to miss tonight's episode. And so, sweetheart, before we get into this, tell them how they can reach us.
They can reach us via email at weareablendedfamily@gmail.com. You can also check out our website, intheblenderministries.com.
Yes, and so listen, guys, we are excited to have you with us. And I'll tell you guys, you do not want to miss this exciting broadcast on tonight. And so again, we have my mother. She's our special guest. And I'm telling you guys, you want to make sure that you get in. It is going to be awesome, phenomenal. The information that I'm sharing is just going to be life-changing. And so, yeah.
Somebody was calling her phone.
Yeah, somebody's calling you. Can you hear us?
Mom, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. We can't see you. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Somebody trying to call you.
Yes. That was Rhonda trying to video chat.
So,
And so,
what part you want? Where we at?
And so, about the website as well.
I gave that already, but our email, I'm going to go from the beginning. Our email is weareablendedfamily@gmail.com, and our website is intheblenderministries.com. And don't forget to pre-order. Hold on one second. We got all these different devices working. Don't forget to pre-order your book, ABCs of the Blended Family. We're taking pre-orders now. Send your name via email, and I'll reply back on how you can prepay for your book. The order is going in this week, and we'll have them back in about 2 weeks. So don't forget to order your book, ABCs of the Blended Family.
And so, listen, guys, like I said, we got a special guest joining us. And I'm telling you guys, this is going to be a good one here. So tonight we have my mother, and we're going to be talking about straight from the mother's mouth. Previously, you guys have seen episodes where we've had two of the girls on. So we talked about from the child's perspective. We had Madeline's ex-husband, Walter, on. We talked about from the biological parents' perspective. And then, of course, you know, you guys get us every Tuesday, but we never talked about from an in-law perspective. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought it would just be phenomenal, awesome, interesting, intriguing, the whole 9 yards for you guys to hear from one of the in-laws. And so I asked my mother, she would come on with us. We didn't prep her. She had no idea of the questions that's going to be asked. And so you guys are going to get this raw and uncut. And so I'm telling you guys, it's going to be phenomenal. I know she's going to share some information that's going to be life-building and life-changing. And so you want to make sure, again, that you have your pad, your pencil, your ink pen, whatever you have to take down these notes, your iPad, whatever there is, you want to make sure that you have those things so that you can take these notes down. And so, Mom.
Yes.
So we're going to kind of, because we did cover some things last week. Of course, we couldn't air it because of the technical difficulties that we were having. So we're gonna kind of do like a brief a brief summary of what we discussed, and then we're gonna go into some further questions. And so, what was your first impression? Because I thought this was an interesting one. So what was your first impression about becoming an instant grandmother of 2 teens and a preteen? Did that choke you?
Yeah, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I said,
no,
did it choke you?
You didn't choke me.
Okay.
My first impression was I had concerns for Madeline, not so much for you, because she was a mother with 3 girls. And in her position, it wouldn't have been an option for me. That wouldn't have been something that I would have chose for my children, to have someone move in the house with us. And I think that would be because of how my life was. So I had no concerns about you being with Madeline, but more about Madeline being with you. And the concerns were not legitimate because of, I based it on how I was raised and what happened to me in my life.
And so what happened to you in your life that sparked those concerns?
So when I was about 14, my mother decided that she was going to move a man into the home with us. And that same man was the person who actually murdered her. And I always, after that point, I had my mind made up that I would never expose my children, whether it was just boys or girls, boys and girls. I would not allow any man to come in the house with my children.
Got you.
I couldn't. But that was because I really hadn't forgave that person, not the person so much that killed her, but I never forgave her for allowing it to happen.
So you're saying you never forgave your mother for allowing that to happen?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And so was that something that you knew you hadn't done, or was that something that kind of had a rebirth when I entered into this relationship?
It had a rebirth when I heard that you and Madeline was getting ready to get married. And at that time I wasn't newly saved, but I was newly in salvation.
Okay.
Learning how things you should hold on to, things you should not hold on. And although I had that reservation, the only thing I interjected into the relationship was I went to Madeline and I said I was really, really, really proud of her that she had the foresight to take you into her home with her children, because that would be something I didn't know how to do. I was 40 years old at that time, 40 plus years old. So all those years I had carried around that unforgiveness. In any other case, I guess someone would have took it and just made it like so hard for you two to get along, to get together, because they didn't know how. But because I was trying so hard to survive, trying so hard to get my life together, that I had stopped saying all the things that I felt, and I had stopped doing all the things I used to do, not when it concerned other people. Because I'm still doing some things I shouldn't do, but I'm saying it that way because I didn't know how to forgive at that point. Thought I had, but I really had not.
And I'm telling you something. I just think that this information that we're sharing on tonight is going to be, because we're now in July. And so this is the second half of the year. And I truly believe that the information that we are sharing on tonight is information that's going to solidify the change that people need. There are so many people that have held on to things from their past in their childhood that has now affected their adulthood.
Exactly.
And so even with that, because that was somewhat of a blended family dynamic.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but until last week, I had never looked at that as a blended family, but it was exactly what it was.
And funny thing is, we talk to so many people who tell us the exact same thing. Because unfortunately, when you say blended family, for most people, there's only one look to a blended family.
Right.
And so because there's only one look to a blended family, when you begin to now start showing them how a blended family can come from all different angles, they're like, wow, I never even thought about that.
Mm-hmm. I had not.
No. I was gonna say, even the young lady who we do the radio broadcast with, it was so funny because she didn't even look at her family initially as a blended family. And it was so impactful that her father even came on with us and shared in the broadcast because he was like, wow, I never even thought of that myself.
Right.
And so, I just thought that was awesome how you even said it took even up to what, last week?
Right. Exactly. Until last week. And it's been over, 50 years? I never thought about it as being a blended family, but that's exactly what it was.
Wow. Was it difficult handling the fact that your son was going to marry a woman with not just one but three children? Was that difficult?
If I had no reservation about my son marrying a woman with children, it was just the opposite. I could only look at it from her standpoint. I didn't even consider what it was you was going into. I only considered what I felt in my heart what she was going into.
So are you saying you really didn't care about me? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying. Of course, you know better than that because I'm still the gunslinger. Don't forget it.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not hearing anything that sounds like you were concerned about me.
Don't. No, that's not it. The problem was, I don't know how most people deal with their life situations, but for me, when I see something about myself, I'm ready to open up and let it be known. I did not realize, I didn't consider how you would be in this relationship. I only considered because of what my life was, what she would have to go through and what her girls would have to go through. Not leaving my son out, because of course, I would never intentionally do that, but that's just where I was when I heard that you two was getting together.
I probably should have had my father on this episode.
Maybe you should have. I'm sorry, but the truth is the truth. I can't color it.
That's right. That's right. Tell the truth.
Oh, hush.
I would have been better than that.
Look, he's in the background telling me he would have been better than that. Okay, well, I bet you this. If somebody had hurt his mother when he was growing up, he wouldn't have been here, and neither would Madeline Hyman, because he'd have killed somebody.
Uh-huh.
That's why I don't have him on the show. So listen. Okay. There is a stigma, right? Concerning mother-in-laws and the wife that a lot of couples have dealt with.
Yes.
Or are dealing with. What makes your relationship, because I think this is very interesting, because a lot of times people have heard us say certain things regarding our relationship with different individuals in our family.
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounds like we're making things up. And so that's the reason why we started inviting family members on, because that will bring validity to what we're saying. Because it's no longer us saying things, but you hear from the proverbial horse's mouth.
Yes.
And so what makes your relationship with your daughter-in-law different? And what advice can you give in-laws that will assist in the success of their children's marriage?
Well, the one thing I hope I did, I constantly try to do, is I don't interfere. I don't suggest what should or should not happen in your home. If you come to me and ask me, I'll give you my opinion. But my opinion to the point where I'm not suggesting that you do anything different or say anything different or be any different. Because I was taught by my grandmother that couples are couples even when you're not around. So if you stare,
you going real fast.
okay.
Okay, so now, because I like to make sure that we get an understanding.
Okay.
So you said couples are couples even when you're not around.
Exactly. When people interject into your family dynamic, your wife, your children, your husband, your children, they're making statement based on what they see from the outside.
Gotcha.
Once the doors are closed and you guys get together, whatever the arguments are or the disagreement are or whatever the agreements are, they're not projected to the whole world. So we don't always get a full picture of what happened. So to involve yourself in somebody's relationship without having both of them in front of you at the same time, I would never do it, because you never give a good answer because you don't have a full picture.
Wow,
that's good.
And so you guys hear that? You in-laws, you hear that? if you're going to give some input, make sure you have both of them there, because unfortunately, you're only going to get a part of the situation. You're going to get a part of the problem. You're going to get a part of what's going on. And so it will be an injustice not only to you, but to them to now give input when you don't even have the full story.
Exactly.
One of the things I always say to Madeline is people, for the most part, are protective. And what I mean by that is they're protective of themselves. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times folks won't tell the truth concerning themselves. Now they'll tell the truth concerning you, but they won't tell the truth concerning them.
Exactly.
And so in order to really get the truth, sometimes you need both of those. Most times you need both of those parties there to be able to tell the whole truth. And because if you don't, somebody's always going to tell something that's going to kind of be slighted or slanted in their direction.
So not so much that they would tell it slanted, they would just leave it out. Because there's some things that they won't say that'll change the whole story. So if you tell all of it, then you know the whole story. Most of us don't tell the whole story because we can really only remember what's important to us.
Wow. Yeah. That was good.
So
that was good.
So this is gonna segue to this. Has your son ever had to choose between you and his wife? And if he ever had to make that decision, based upon what you know about your son, which is moi, how would that end up?
I would say, I don't know if you really ever had to make a choice. Well, let's say this. There have been times when I've invited you to come to something we had here in Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
And it would be something that's happening with you and Madeline. If you say, Madeline, I got something going on, I don't pressure it. I don't ask what. I just know it's Madeline and Brandon.
Okay. That was a good answer.
So the choice wouldn't be that you would just choose Madeline. That's the bottom line. I know that.
Okay. No, that's good because I wait.
No, go ahead.
No,
No, go ahead.
I talked to so many guys that struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's been proven that guys are closer to their mothers than their fathers for whatever reason. For the most part, not all, but most men, or most men when they were boys growing up, they were closer with their moms.
Yes.
And so, even me myself, I was extremely close with my mother. My father may at times want to call me a mama's boy. Oh, he had nothing to say. Okay, I'm good then. And so,
Did you hear? He told me, he didn't hear that one.
okay, good. And so at times he may have wanted to call me a mama's boy, but I knew that my relationship with my wife was supposed to be greater than my relationship with my mother.
Exactly.
Because
that was only about learning, teaching. And that's biblical. For the man is supposed to leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife. So they don't understand. That don't mean that if I call you and I need you, I don't just call you and need you. I consult with your wife too.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And so with me, because I'm a scripture guy, you know what I'm saying? Not only does it say leave your father and mother, but it says cleave unto your wife. And then he topped it off and said the two shall be one flesh.
Right.
For me, because me and you can't be one flesh, because there's something wrong with that picture.
A whole lot.
Then you can't be paramount. You can't be number one.
Exactly.
So she has to be number one because she's the only one that I have permission to be one flesh with.
Exactly.
And so for me, making decisions and choices when you ask me something, or when my parents ask me something, or when I'm needed to do something, me considering her has to be first because we're one flesh.
Exactly.
And I do agree with Mom, because I cannot ever recall a time where it was like she even put you in a position where you had to actually choose between me or her.
I wouldn't.
Like she said, it may have been a time where it may have been something going on or whatever, something simple like that. But in all the 21 years that we've been married, I can never recall where she actually put you in a position where it was like, oh my gosh, even though she know it would be Madeline, but I don't ever recall her even putting you in a position of that sort.
Yeah, I mean,
and I want to just say this. It's important that parents of married couples take that stance. You shouldn't put your daughter or your son in a position that they should choose between one another for you. You shouldn't do it.
Period. And for me, because of the things I saw growing up, my mother knew my position. Even before I got married, she already knew if it was a choice between my mama and the wife of my children, she didn't have a chance.
Yeah, that's right.
That was established with us before I ever even thought about getting married, because I knew that wasn't the way I wanted to operate. I wasn't going to put my wife in that position where she felt second. And so that's key. You hear me, guys? Your wife should never be in a position where she feels second. She should always feel first. So if you've been messing up with that, get it together, get it straight, and fix it. It's never too late.
That's right.
It's never too late. So has there ever been a time, this is a good one, has there ever been a time where your daughter-in-law did not seem to be happy that you were who you are?
Well, I don't quite understand it. Did I see that she did not approve of who I was?
Of you being her mother-in-law.
I honestly can't say that I have.
Okay.
Now, if it was ever a time, she never let me know. And I know we could not agree on everything because nobody does. But if it was something that came up that she didn't agree on, I'm sure she came to me and said something. Like I tell you this for instance. I'm a gamer, so I like to play video games. I'm just a gamer. So at one point I was doing games on Facebook and I had a whole lot of stuff popping on Facebook. So Madeline said, "Mom, I'm gonna have to unfriend you because you got too much going on." I didn't take offense to her. She was right. That wasn't her stuff. That was mine.
So you trying to tell me your daughter unfriended you on Facebook?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Now, am I telling you the truth?
How long ago was that, Mom? How long ago was that?
That was long time ago. Long time ago.
She cut my mama off.
Was that me, Mom? Did I really do that?
She cut my mama off.
That was you, Madeline. That really was you.
I don't remember that.
But you know what I learned to do? I learned not to post that kind of stuff on Facebook because when your friends follow you, they follow all your stuff.
Correct.
So I didn't do it. And other than that, I can't ever remember I did anything that was not, and I'm saying that to say this. We don't know what bothers somebody else, and you should not take offense when somebody tell you that's not, I don't like that. So I know you're going to be doing it. So I'm just going to cut that part. She didn't cut me. I don't even think she even realized we were on Facebook together. It didn't last long because I cleaned it up. See, that with her telling me, it made me clean up my stuff.
She cut my mama off Facebook.
We friends now, right, Matt?
We friends on Facebook now, Mom. Yes.
So listen, I got to move on because I got stuck. She cut my mama off.
So you know your wife is about it.
Yeah, she cut my mama off. So listen. Studies show that men are less likely to worry that their in-laws are interested. And this is kind of like a joint one right here. Studies show that men are less likely to worry that their in-laws are interfering with their relationship. Men tend to identify themselves as provider first and the father and the husband second. So they don't find their in-laws' input particularly threatening. Did you initially find yourself concerned about your in-laws interfering in your marriage? And this question is to you.
Are you asking me the question or Madeline?
I'm asking Madeline the question now.
Oh, okay.
Asking her, did she feel, and did she initially, not now, but did you initially feel concerned about your in-laws interfering with your marriage?
Never, because in the times that we were like go to Philly, I mean, because of all the conversations that I had with like Dad and Mom before we got married, I was already comfortable and understood where they were coming from. So I never even thought that they would be the type that would interfere. I already knew that they wouldn't be.
No.
So I never, no, I was never concerned about that.
And that's good, guys, because a lesson in that is she spent quality time with them to understand them. And I find out that a lot of times people don't spend the quality time with their in-laws to even get an understanding of their position in life, what they like, what they don't like, what they agree with, what they don't agree with, even how they're going to treat you or how they're not going to treat you. Mm-hmm. So because one of the things that I did, guys, now watch this. One of the things that I did that my wife didn't even know I was doing at the particular time was, I knew that this was the one, Like it was no doubt in my mind that she was the one I was going to spend the rest of my life with. I took her to see my parents. I wanted to introduce her to my folks because if my mother would have said, don't do it, it wouldn't have got done.
No. Is that true? Did she tell you the first time don't do it? Or she never told you?
She said she gave me some kind of
didn't you give him
some Jedi signals.
Didn't you say something?
But watch this.
Well, no, that was for your first wife. That wasn't Madeline.
No. What I'm saying is, if you would have told me when you met Madeline, don't do it, it wouldn't happen.
Oh, okay.
I was saying that because based upon what I went through previously.
Okay. So that's true because I did do that on the first go round.
Yeah, and no, that's what I was saying. So that's why I took my wife there to meet my parents because of the decision I made before. Mm-hmm. I knew they weren't going to allow me to make the same mistake, at least without giving their input.
He didn't go.
Now, if they would have gave their input and I still would have went against it, then that would have been something different.
Exactly.
Because I knew that they weren't going to allow me to do that. I wanted to make sure that I got the thumbs up from them. And so when I knew that Madeline was going to be the one, I drove her right on up. I said, hey, let's go for a road trip. Well, we used to just hop in the car and drive. And we drove on up to Philly and I took her right in there and they got to talking. And I knew things was good because my mother only spent less than 5 minutes with her. If my mother only spent less than 5 minutes with her and she was okay, I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we got a chance though to have many times together. I mean, times we used to cook together. I mean, we had a lot of opportunities to get to know each other prior to, but I even felt more comfortable because a lot of our family end up knowing each other's family, but you and I never knew each other.
Exactly.
Dad knew your dad and, your mom and everybody. I mean, it was like the families knew each other, but we never knew each other. So it was a sense, even a comfort there.
So why didn't we know each other?
I don't know.
Because you're a cougar.
Ooh. Okay. Not on camera. No slapping.
That's okay. He'll be on here by himself next week and he's going to wonder why. I'm going to go right upstairs and get in the bed and be like, oh, I'm tired. He'll be on here next week. Wow. Look for him by himself.
That's okay. On to the next thing.
Exactly. So listen, they say that closeness with in-laws may give the mother-in-law, and we kind of danced around this a little bit, but we're going to kind of jump in this one. But they say closeness with in-laws may give the mother-in-law a greater sense of access and ability to cross boundaries and meddle, which can seem threatening, particularly if a woman feels that her in-laws are interfering with her identity as a wife and mother. Mom, how did you manage to do the opposite? And was it a challenge to mind your own business, especially when you saw things that you felt weren't right?
I'm not sure that this is what I do know. I do know that I did not come or to Madeline and say, I don't think you should be doing things this way. I don't think you should be doing things that way. Because when I met her, I could tell that she already had a handle on what she expected from her girls and what she expected from her marriage. I could tell that from her. So I had nothing to critique about it. That's the word I'm going to use. I just didn't. And I don't know if I didn't do it because I had heard so much. If it was me, I wouldn't. If it was me, I couldn't. And at the same time, none of them did. And I say that to say this. Most of the people that came along the 47 years your father and I were together, they're either separated. Matter of fact, all of them separated, I know of. So I think that.
Did you make him sneeze when you said that? I said, did you make him sneeze when you said that?
No, he just got allergies. I hope that's what it was. So I do know that there's some that were separated and we got back together, but nobody stayed the whole way. And I think it was because when anybody came to me to tell me anything about James Hyman, I would just say, well, tell him, because I'm not concerned with that. And when you cut people off from filling in the space of your life that you don't want them in, they'll learn how to back off. Madeline didn't have to do that with me, but I can't see her doing that with almost anybody, because I see her as being a person who would say, not even with words, but it's a look that she could give them that say, that's wrong. You need to stop that. So no, I never had an issue that I would interject or make it known to her that I needed to say something to her about how she was handling her home.
And that was one of the things that, although I knew the answer to that, it was still important that I asked that question, because again, so many people are dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
People are dealing with that situation where, you know, they have one, the father-in-law could be close with the wife.
Right.
And because of that closeness, he may feel that he can cross lines.
Right.
Things he have no business saying. The mother-in-law, she could be close with the son and feel like because of that closeness, she can cross boundaries and she can say anything. And it could be the father as well. He may feel they can have a good father-son relationship. And he may feel like, you know, because I ran my house the way I ran my house, then I'm going to tell you how to run your house. Well, at the end of the day, every house is different.
Exactly.
And everybody deals with things differently. Now, there are some things as a parent that you just know. No ifs, ands, buts about it. But if you're not asked that information, then you're in the wrong if you want to give it. Because now you're crossing those boundaries.
Exactly.
And see, for me, it was more of, and so, I mean, people hear me, I always tell my story. And one of the parts of me telling my story, I always say, if it happened to me, it's my story.
Exactly.
And so my family already know, if it happened to me, I'm going to tell it.
Mm-hmm.
They know I'm big enough to deal with me telling it because it's my story. And it affected me and it made me who I am. And so nobody has the right to tell me what I can or can't say about my story. That's just not going to happen. And so there were things that I dealt with and I saw even growing up, even with my father. And I always say my father was the greatest teacher I've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
He was flat out the greatest teacher I've ever known. He taught me so many great things on so many levels. Some what to do and some what not to do. And because I was so observant, because I wanted to know, I've always been fascinated by human behavior. And I think that's what assisted me in making some of the decisions that I made because of that fascination. And I saw how seemingly my father's family superseded our family.
Mm-hmm.
Even
the immediate family, you mean?
Yes, our immediate family. Like me and you, because back then it was just me and you. My sister,
right?
She wasn't born. We're 10 years apart. And so even then, I was very observant. Even as a young child, I watched things and I put things together. And so I saw how it seemed as if my grandmother would call, he would go.
Yes, he would.
His sisters had a need, he would go. And it felt like, okay, but what about us?
Mm-hmm.
And particularly, what about my mother? Because we were close.
Exactly.
And so I just always told myself that when and if I get married, I wasn't going to do that with my wife. I wasn't going to make her feel like she was a second-class citizen. Not saying that you felt that way. That's the way I
Preceded it.
Yeah, that's the way I perceived what you went through. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't put her in that position. And so even like when I asked you the question about if you ever asked me or if you ever put me in a position, what would I do? Or you already knew growing up, because I should always tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna let my family do that. And so you knew even from a child when he get married, not that you would, but you knew I wouldn't allow it.
Exactly. I was praying that anyway. and so, and I want to say this part of it. Up until today, I'm still that person who can stay at home and just play a game, read a book, watch TV by myself. I've never needed a lot of people around me to make me complete. I never made my children feel like they need to be in a group to be complete. I've always told, especially I told you that you don't need to do everything everybody else do. Be your own man. If you didn't follow my instructions, something happened to you, you come back to me whimpering. My first thing was, well, I told you not to. Sometimes it may not have seemed like it was the right thing to do, but I felt like it was making you strong to make the decision that you need to make so that you be wise enough to know if I do this, this is what's going to happen. And even at that, we still have to allow children to go ahead and do what they have to do what they then learn. Because you really don't learn unless you go out and do something.
Well, let me say this. It really wasn't the right thing to do, because if I could call them people on you, I would, because when you know I had my face stuck on that pole and you didn't take me to the hospital and you try to sew my face up, you should have.
Oh, I did. Wait a minute. I didn't try to sew your face up. I sewed your face up. Okay.
You should have got some silver bracelets.
Okay.
That's what should have happened to you.
Yeah. Your sister said the same thing. I said, don't go outside with them guys riding the motorcycle because somebody's going to get hurt. One ran up her face, up her leg, up her face. She came in the house crying. Go get in the Epsom salt. This is what happens to a person who was brought up the way I was. We were tender girls. I'm sorry. But to have somebody come into your life and tell you about your children when you know your children, it's up to you to say, well, I'm not accepting it. And that's what a lot of and more so with blended families, because people think they have a right to tell you how to make it. They can only tell you an example of what happens when you do this or when you do that. And sometimes that don't change. It's the same as your that big.
Correct.
But it can keep you from going down the wrong road too long that you can't come back on.
And you know, and that's one of the did you want to say something? That's one of the reasons why we started this in the blender, because we just knew that there were so many things that we experienced that can assist. Not that we want to tell people we have the blueprint, not that we want to tell people that we have all the answers, because we don't.
Exactly.
But we've managed to be successful in this dynamic, so much so that we know that we can help and assist. And there were some hard choices and decisions that we made along the way that have catapulted us into who we are today.
Exactly.
There were bad decisions that we made that have catapulted us to who we are today. Mm-hmm. And so there are some things we always hear our pastors say this statement that you don't have to jump in the ditch to find out how a person got there. All you have to do is ask.
Exactly.
Well, we made in the blender that platform that now people can ask. And most of them don't ask directly, they ask indirectly. I was looking at one of the postings Daryl put up here. Most of them don't ask directly, they ask indirectly. And so
Mhm.
they ask indirectly. Every Tuesday, they're here watching us to find out how can I improve in this blended family dynamic. That's how they're asking. And so it's important to us to attack this from every different angle.
Yes, it is.
I wanted people to hear tonight on how a mother-in-law or how an in-law handled things, how an in-law navigated this blended family dynamic in a positive way. I'll say this, and I'm just about positive my wife can ditto on this. I think as it relates to parents, I think you guys have been exceptional as relates to what parents should do and how they should conduct themselves in this, the in-laws, how they conduct themselves in this blended family dynamic.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have to give you guys your props, your kudos, because never once have I felt like I had to make a choice. Never once have I felt like you guys were impeding or intruding in my marriage. And I especially have to give my father props on that because with his background, he did a great job.
Yes, he did. But salvation has a key in that. When
Exactly.
you're trying to do something different, and this is the thing that if in-laws would just step back. So if say for instance, is there's balance in the house, you don't want to see whether it's the male or the female to get to the point where something tragic happens. Then you can step in. Then you make a suggestion. But just to go in and think you can tell a family how a family should be ran, they need to back off. Watch, then pray about it. Because if you pray about it, then that prayer can go where you can't go. It can solve problems that you would never know they even exist.
And I love that. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what we saw, you know what I'm saying, over these last 21 years. We saw parents that would sit back and intercede on our behalf,
Mm-hmm.
that would really seek the face of God concerning our well-being and our progression and our promotion and our increase, so that even when we didn't make the best decisions, we still recovered.
Yes.
We still recovered. And so I want to encourage in-laws, listen, you may not agree with the decisions or the choices that your child has made or are making. If you learn how to intercede on their behalf, you can change things like you've never even imagined that you can change them.
Exactly.
Because one of the things that my mother knew, and well, both my parents knew about me, was at times I could be stubborn. And if I set myself to something, it's almost, you could forget trying to convince me otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But because I knew that they were, for me, it was more about, and I'm even still this way today. And I believe internally a lot of us are, I always want to make my parents proud. I always wanted to be that child to make my parents say, that's my son. Not, oh, that's my son. You know, you saying the same thing.
Yes.
Different. I wanted them to be proud of their accomplishments, because everything I accomplished is a representation of my parents. It speaks volumes to how they trained and taught me growing up. And so I just always wanted to make sure that I was pleasing to them. And so I would make decisions based upon, not just based upon my wife, but also I wanted to make sure my parents was happy with me as well. And so I just wanted to bring that aspect to this thing because it helps in-laws to look at their impact and their input differently. Because some of you guys got too much to say as it relates to your child's relationship. Some of y'all got too much to say. If you're not concerned about both parties, then you need to keep it to yourself. If you're not concerned about whether your daughter is right or your son is right, not just so much the in-laws, but you need to be concerned about everybody's being correct. And if you're not gonna be biased, unbiased, if you're not gonna take that stance where you're not gonna be on one particular side, but you're gonna be on the side of right, then I would encourage you to keep your opinions to yourself. Because you do more damage than you do good. Anything you want to add to that? I mean, because even for us, we're parents, and we have children that are now married, and so we have to now be careful of the advice.
And give it when I'm asked.
And the one exactly, and the one
exactly,
and the one to give advice.
If you ask, I'll give it. If you don't ask, I'm not gonna just say. You ask, I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, I'll just say.
No, exactly.
I mean, just like what Mom said, you just intercede on their behalf.
And those are great lessons that we learn.
Yeah. We
learn that, you know what I'm saying? Because it's not no picking up the phone and like, you know, you should do this, you should do that. No. If you don't ask, then we like the military. Don't ask, don't tell. You don't ask, we don't tell.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Now, unless there may be a time where we just see imminent danger.
Yes.
Something that just could be devastating. Now, that's a time where you might get some input. But other than that, we just going to intercede on you. Intercede on your behalf. We're going to make sure that we cover you with prayer.
Yes.
And so, listen, guys, we want to thank you again. I know. Mm-hmm. We want to thank you. You know what I'm saying? We have my mom up here. We're talking about straight from the mother's mouth. And so we wanted to address the blended family from an in-law perspective. And I thought that she would be the perfect person to. Chief, you late, man.
He is late, way late.
I thought you were the perfect person to join in with us on this, to give your input. I trust the things that you would say. I know you to be a woman of God. I know you're a praying woman. And so I'm not concerned about you just saying something that I will have to edit later. I know that whatever you share is going to be a blessing to all that watch and view us. And so again, guys, we want to thank you guys for tuning in to us. This has been so awesome. We had my mom up here, my wife, she was with me today. Last week she was a little exhausted. So I let her rest a little bit last week, but she's ready to roll today. And so I got two more questions before we close out, Mom.
I think that one was asked.
Go ahead, ask that question. Ask that one.
You asking.
Go ahead.
There are a lot of times in-laws that play between their child's ex and their current spouse. What did you do not to cross that line? And did you ever feel any pressure to lean to one side or the other?
That was.
Yeah.
No, I've never crossed that line. And I've never I don't lean one side to the other. I am still in contact with my grandson's mother. She can call me, but she know what she called me. We're talking about the grandson, her son, my son's son. She's not allowed to talk to me about his present wife. I don't allow it. And if you don't allow things, you don't have to worry about crossing over or saying, she said. I just don't. And I just don't do that with that. I don't allow myself to do that with most things. You cannot find me in a gossip column because I'm not going to do it. First of all, I don't know the full story. But I know what's important there is that my son has found a wife and my daughter has found a husband. And I'm very proud of the two of them. So I would never allow anybody to use me to jeopardize that relationship. I just wouldn't. And that's just not because I'm call myself saved now. When I was not saved, you couldn't pull me into that. And I definitely won't go there now.
And so listen, guys, this was the question. There are a lot of in-laws that play between their child's ex and their current spouse. And we've heard it. We've heard it. I mean, and some of you guys watching us right now, you're dealing with that very same thing. There's an ex, there's a baby mama, there's a baby daddy. And because that parent, those in-laws had a relationship with them first, you guys are now having a battle because that person has more weight than you do or than your spouse does. And so one of the things that I love what my mother said was, she said she put boundaries in place. Listen, guys, you're going to have boundaries in place. When you're dealing with that type of situation where now your son gets married or your daughter gets married or remarried, but you still have to communicate with the ex or the mother of the child or the father of the child, there has to be boundaries set, which means you as the in-law and them as the ex or the biological parent, your conversations have to simply surround themselves around that child.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
It can't go into the husband. It can't go into the son. It can't go into the daughter. It can't go into their marriage, their relationship, what they're doing, what they're not doing. It only has to center around that grandchild. Because once you cross that line, once you reach over that boundary, you're going to find things in a world of trouble. Because now you're dealing with resentment, you're dealing with animosity, you're dealing with hatred. You run the risk of now losing even the relationship that you even had with your child, especially if they're principled. If they're principled, they're not going to allow you to jeopardize their home. And so now you may run the risk of even that. And so I thought that was good. I thought that was good. That was good. And so listen, guys, we're almost out of time, but we're definitely not out of things to talk about. Listen, we want to thank my mother for joining us on tonight. I'm telling you guys, this is a phenomenal woman. She about 4'1". She's about 4'1".
You gonna say it how many times?
Oh yeah, she about 4'1". But listen, she did not play, and she still doesn't play. And so I just thought it would be awesome to have her on here with us to share with you guys, to kind of give you guys some input. I got Chief on here, Ma. He couldn't wait. He couldn't wait for you to get on.
Hey, Chief.
Wait for you to get on.
Now, tell him, don't tell everybody I beat him. I don't want nobody up there telling them I beat them.
Yeah, he good. You good.
I don't know none of them that I didn't get.
Hey, Ma. Anyway. He said you walk like you 7 foot tall.
Exactly. I sure enough did. I didn't know no better. Still don't.
Exactly. And so, again, we thank you for joining us. Listen, guys, we pray that this has been a flat out blessing to you guys, that you've heard something that will transform your family dynamic from the perspective of the in-laws. Listen, you can reach us by email at weareblendedfamily@gmail.com. If you have any questions, anything you want to know about this segment that we didn't cover, but you want us to go back and cover, shoot us an email. Hit us up on Facebook. Say, hey guys, you didn't talk about this. What would you do in this situation? We will love to address that. We would love to assist you guys in building that family to where you want to be built to. Also, lift that book up, sweetheart. Put your order in. This is the ABCs of the blended family. I'm telling you guys, it's going. We're telling you guys like hot cakes. You want to make sure you get this in your arsenal. Short read. It's a very short, easy read from A to Z. There's some building blocks that's going to assist you in taking your family to that next level and that next dimension. Also, on Thursday nights, listen, you can watch us, you can tune into us, listen to us at 365 live365.com. Live365.com. That's WJMS Radio from 8 to 9 p.m. Most times it's a replay of what we discussed on Tuesday nights, but you want to make sure you tune in because I'm sure that there are some things that we discussed tonight that you did not get. And so you want to avail yourself to that information. Also, to listen, your boy just did his first shoot. And so we want to make sure you guys go to my Facebook page. You guys are going to see some information on how you can order that. Listen, we're doing some phenomenal things here. We want you guys to be a part of it. Thank you for tuning in to In the Blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman. And until next week, bye-bye.
Thanks, Mom.
Bye. You be blessed, babies.
You too. Bye. Love you. Bye, guys.
Love you too. Bye-bye. So how do I go?